Hi, my name is Tammy,
And I'm Jen.
and they call us Woo. Hi, everybody. We are going to get right into it today. One of our listeners suggested delving a little bit more into kind of what happens when people cross over, how mediums communicate, things like that. And that brought up kind of an interesting thought that Jen and I have talked about before, which, if you're anything like me, is going to blow your mind a little bit. But we were talking about how it is that sometimes, mediums will try to connect with people, people might not come through. Or maybe they're expecting to connect with a certain person and somebody else ends up being the one who comes through. And when she told me this, it seems simple, but again, it was a little mind blowing to me. Where basically it was like, well, you know, those who have crossed over are still their own beings with free will. And I like the analogy of, just because you knock on someone's door doesn't mean they need to answer. And it kind of blew my mind because I was like, oh my God, it not only was made so much sense, but also this idea that we seem to have that we are like the center of everything and that everything revolves around us, everything is there for our benefit. It kind of
Mhm.
like knocked me down a few pegs where I was like, oh yeah, duh. I'm not the only person that is moving through the universe, through this realm. And yeah, just because I want someone to be available for me doesn't necessarily mean they can be. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that today. Like what does that look like? What things are people doing sometimes when they're not available? What happens after they're moving on to the other side? Though what that looks like, I guess. Let's just talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
I know that's
Okay.
a big mouthful, so take any piece of that you want and start with there.
I'm like, where to start with this? Um, so the thing that keeps coming into my brain is like the afterlife kind of the review process for people when people cross over. The review process looks similar for everybody, but still has pieces that are different. But when somebody crosses over, depending on if this is their 5,000th time in an incarnation on Earth, or if it's one of their first incarnations, like the crossing over process might be more difficult for them. Like they might be super used to it, be like, oh, I'm jumping out of this body, I'm gonna go do this now. Or it could be like, what the heck just happened? I was in a body and now I'm not attached to anything. Like, what am I doing? Where am I?
Mm,
So there's a like kind of a process that they go through where they're reintegrating into the soul realm, stepping out of a body and kind of looking at, okay, these are the things that I experienced on Earth. These are the things that I experienced in this human body. These are the things that I now am remembering and recognizing. I did this really well. I didn't do this quite so well. These are things I can still work on as a soul.
mm-hmm.
So it's a process of reviewing the life that people have had. This is one of the things that I've talked about with people quite often with like the belief that you're judged at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people are like, oh, it's judgment day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the judgment is really on you. Like you are looking at your experiences. You are looking at the emotions that were caused in situations that you walked through. You're looking at all of those things with your guides, with your team, with the other souls that you are walking with in this incarnation. So you're taking that time to review it and go, "Oh, I set this up so that I could learn this specific thing. And now I can see the other side of that because you're
Mm,
witnessing it. You're seeing the interaction you had with people down here. So
sure.
there's like the whole review process.
Kind of like
So
watching yourself in a movie. You might see it from a different perspective.
exactly. Exactly. And so sometimes when people cross over, they're taking a period of time to reintegrate into the divine realm that they're walking into. Like they're stepping out of this really human egoic space, this very like grounded, very earthy space, and going into this really flighty space with all of this information that they're trying to integrate back into those energies. And so when a soul crosses over, depending on how many times they have crossed, how many incarnations they've been in, they might be really good at integrating and they might not know how to do it yet. So there are times when people try to connect with somebody who's passed and they're not at that point yet where they understand how to connect to the human realm again because their vibration changes when they cross over. They're no longer in the super grounded state, and so they have to learn how to bring their energy down to a space where they can connect with somebody who's in the human realm again. Just like a medium, anybody, an intuitive, anybody who's connecting to somebody who's crossed over, they have to raise their vibration to match another vibration. Well, when you've crossed over, you have to bring that vibration back down to connect. Um, so until they figure out how to do that, they might not come through because they're like, I don't know how to talk to you. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
it's like when you give kids old school phones and you ask them to dial a rotary phone and they're like, I don't know how to do that. It's the exact same thing. It's like, how do I call them? I don't know how to do that. Um, so sometimes that's part of it is the integration piece. The other part of it though is that sometimes we're asking for information and we're trying to get answers that our human body is not ready to accept. So you're going to a meeting, a medium, you're going to somebody and you're asking people, why did this happen? How can I move forward? What is my purpose? This person just crossed over, so they should be able to tell me all these answers. Well, you might not be ready to hear those answers, one. Two, it might not be in your best interest to hear those answers. It might persuade you to do something that isn't going to give you the experiences that you're here to have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so spirits who've crossed over might be like, yeah, I'm not going to give you that information right now. So I'm just not going to step forward with that. And as somebody who like I am a medium. I do connect with people who've crossed over. It is not my favorite thing to do in the whole entire world because there is, and I was explaining this to Tammy, there's a lot of emotions involved in it, and there's a lot of expectations from people. Um, People will come to you expecting that you're going to give them all the answers, that you're going to tell them exactly what this
Mm-hmm.
person is saying to you, and like bring this person back to you. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of emotion tied in that. There's a lot of expectation.
Yeah.
And when that happens, and that spirit who crossed over is like, yeah, no, this isn't what they need right now. I'm going to sit back and I'm not giving you answers. As the person who's sitting there in front of that other person, it can be really difficult.
Like,
People
don't
can get
kill the
really,
messenger.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, and like there is an air of there's a lot of people out there who are lying and saying that they're doing this. They're saying that they're connecting with people. There's scammers out there who are doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of accusations that can happen,
Sure.
but there's also a lot of people are hurting. They just want to connect with their loved one who crossed over. Why wouldn't they come? Like that's what people ask. Well, why wouldn't they come here?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what did I do? Why am I not worthy of them coming forward? So it adds to the emotion of it. And sometimes people can't hear the messages that they really need to hear because they're so
Right.
wrapped up in the human emotion part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or they're so attached to the energy of that person who crossed over that they're not paying attention to anything else in their life. They're so stuck to their grief or to their love of that person that they would do anything to continue connecting with that person and they stop
Mm-hmm.
living. And for me, um, as the intuitive who's sitting in front of them, like I hate to see people get stuck in that place. Like I don't want to see somebody constantly going from medium to intuitive, asking the same questions in a different way because they just want to connect to somebody that they could legit just reach out to on their
Mm-hmm.
own. We all have that ability. We all have that sense. And sometimes people just get really stuck
Yeah.
in the idea of somebody telling them that they're still there.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
so,
sometimes people are looking for specific answers because they think that's what will make them feel better. You
yeah,
know, like if they don't hear what they think they want to hear, they're going to keep looking for that one specific thing, even if that might not be the answer that they're ever going to get.
yeah, yeah. And the spirits on the other side, the people who've crossed over, our guides, our higher self, they all know like what's happening. They're witnessing what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
They see the emotions. And
But they
I don't
also
want to
see a
say
broader perspective.
yes. And it's like their obligation is not to us as human beings.
Right.
Like their experience, their purpose
Mm-hmm.
is to continue living and experiencing and assisting where they're called to assist.
Right.
So if they're
Which is
still
kind of like what
working
we
with
were
you,
saying is we have to remind ourselves that this is not it's not just for us. These
no.
are, you know, souls that have their own purpose and their own life on the other side
Mhm.
that we might not understand.
Yeah. And that's not to say that they're not there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can be in 20 million different places at one time. Like their energy,
Mm-hmm.
they're moving throughout space time in ways that we could never fathom. But it may not be for our highest good for them to stick around and
Yeah.
answer every single question
Well,
that you have.
we think of it from a broader perspective, right? Like if you're looking at, if we're only seeing the road right in front of us and someone's looking from a higher level, they might see that roadblock or the crash or something
Mhm.
coming straight for you further down the road that you just can't see yet. So
Yeah.
it might not be in our best interest to continue down that path,
Yeah.
but we just don't know it because we can't see all of those things. And like you said, it's easy to get stuck. Grief is terrible. I mean,
Yes.
just having experienced a pretty deep loss myself, you know, it's
Yeah.
you don't feel like yourself. You don't feel connected to your own body. It's well, I think it's something that we should be allowed to experience because that is part of the human experience is the range of emotions. You you can't live there forever. Um,
No.
it's not going to it's not necessarily going to make you feel closer to the person. You can grieve and you can grieve however you need to grieve. You can be in it
Mhm.
as long as you want to be. There shouldn't be a judgment around that. But if the
Yeah.
rest of your life is not moving forward because you're in the grief so deeply, it then makes kind of a sad situation for everyone, right? Because then
Yep.
when they passed, kind of so did you too, you know?
Yep.
And maybe that's part of your experience. I don't know. No judgment about any of that. Um,
Yeah.
I really appreciated in, you know, the grief that I've been experiencing people who are holding space without judgment about how this looks or how long it's going to take or anything. So please nobody take it that way. But I guess the way I feel is my loved ones who are still very present are rooting for me to be able to experience all of these other beautiful things, not just grief the rest of my life.
Yeah.
The grief will come, the grief will go, but they also want me to enjoy just kind of how I think about it. You know, if something were to happen to me and my husband didn't have me anymore, I think there's this romanticized idea that people are just like, oh, I can't live without you. That's not romantic to me. Like, I
Yeah.
want him to be happy. I don't want his life to stop if something
Yeah.
were to happen to me because I love him. I want him to experience all the good things too. And
Yeah.
that's kind of how I feel like it it makes the most sense to me. And so many things that you just said brought up other questions. I mean, I'm trying to pick one. So one of the things that you said earlier on, which I think is an interesting thing to talk about, is so do guides, your spirit guides, have a different role in your life than those loved ones who have crossed over? Can someone be a loved one who crossed over and a guide? What is the role of your guides? What is the role of those people? Because I think sometimes people assume that, you know, your guardian
Mhm.
angels, whatever they want to call them, are all your loved ones who have passed. And I don't necessarily think that's always the case.
This is a controversial topic, let me tell you. So my belief is that a lot of the time, a good portion of the time, our guides are not people that we were close to in our lifetime or somebody who is directly related to us. Um, because our guides are there to guide us regardless of our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody is like this with you, sometimes it is harder to say, no, you shouldn't do that. Not to should all over anybody, but
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
no, that's not a good choice for you. And I know that you really want to go there, but I'm just going to tell you right now, you need to check yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's harder for a loved one to tell you
Mm-hmm.
than for somebody that you don't have that relationship with.
Yeah.
And so when people cross over, a lot of the time they can be a helping spirit. They can be there for you and support you and help you when you really need some extra assistance. But our main guides are appointed to us, chosen, brought to you because they have a special set of knowledge
Mm-hmm.
for what you're going to walk through, for the things that you have chosen on your incarnation path, the things that you have laid out in your plan. Those guides are aware of those topics. So for me, like a huge part of my life has been healing work and doing shamanic work and massage and all kinds of healing stuff. Well, actually, two of my guides. One of my guides is a shaman, one of them is an Eastern medical practitioner. Like they
Mm-hmm.
step in when I'm doing work. They have that knowledge base. They've been guides for me since I was young. And they bring that knowledge to the table. As you learn and grow, your guides can shift, your guides can change. A lot of the time, your guides will grow with you. So you might have a guide who is working with you when you're a child on how to deal with your emotions, like might be walking through that with you. And as you get older and you have learned that skill set, they're like, okay, I'm out. I'm still going to come back and check in on you. If you need me, I'm still here, but I'm going to move on and go help somebody else who needs this same skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And another guide will step in to assist you. But
Interesting.
most of the time, it is not somebody that you know. I have seen people whose like grandfather or great grandfather that they never knew will step in and help
Mm-hmm.
assist, and step into a guide role because they didn't have that relationship. They weren't like interacting on a regular basis, so there's not that need to help them navigate their emotions.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, so guides can be a tricky thing because a lot of people are like, well, my guardian angel is this person who passed away, or my guide is this person who passed away. And a lot of the time I'm like, well, they're here to help you, but that's not necessarily their role.
That makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate talking about this stuff because, again, it helps flesh out the idea that it's not just us on this plane of existence and then nothing after that, or it's just only about this life or whatever. I mean, that's kind of part of what makes us all beautiful, is that we have the capacity to continue on and continue learning. And I like that you brought up that your guide can also be learning and doing different things,
Hmm.
as the two of you are interacting. There could be a point in time where it's not needed. I mean, it's really similar to friendships and things in this realm. There's
Yep.
people who come into your life for a period of time for an important reason, but maybe they're not going to be there forever, and
Yep.
that's just the role that they're playing. um or you're playing for each other.
Yeah.
um but I really like that explanation of the guides a little more too, because when we first started talking about all this stuff, and I have always had a million questions for you, which I appreciate you always willing to answer. um it made more and more sense the more you explained it. And certainly I think it takes the grief out of it a little bit when you understand that some of these relatives who have passed, when they do come to visit you, it's not that they're not still present with you. It's just that that's not their job to do all of those really deep interactions between you and the other realm. They're visiting you the same way you would have visited them in this world, in the sense of, stopping in to say hi and make sure you're doing okay,
Yeah.
which is kind of beautiful in its own way. I know that
Yeah.
I've had interactions with a lot of people. I know that, kind of like what you were saying, people have the capability of connecting with anybody. And I most certainly got some really deep and important messages from the person I lost recently. Um, that when you recognize it and when you acknowledge that, um, they're just kind of checking in,
Hmm.
and you're checking in with them, they're checking in with you. It feels it feels good to know that you have the power to be able to do that, like you said, without necessarily needing to have a medium do it for you. And it
Yeah.
is interesting because, to me, then that kind of explains why some mediums seem to work differently than others based on what they feel comfortable with and what their skill sets are, and that
Yep.
not every medium is exactly the same. And absolutely
No.
certainly, if you are concerned about scams, yes, we've talked about that before, and kind of how to try to recognize that. But maybe understanding how to focus on the messages that are being given to you and seeing if those make sense to you versus being stuck on whether one person is giving you
Yep.
those messages might be helpful.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Because I know
Yeah.
you've said before that you've had people who got really upset at a message you gave them, but then came back later and were like, you were
Hmm.
absolutely right. I just wasn't ready to hear it yet. And
Yeah.
I can honestly say personally that you've never given me any information that wasn't absolutely true.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I mean, I have the benefit of being able to talk to you all the time too and know who you are, but it is
Yeah.
interesting that you choose not to do the type of readings that some others will do, where they're looking for one specific person to speak
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
So, have you had experiences around that where someone was looking to talk to someone specifically, and I know you kind of mentioned either they didn't get the information they wanted but were able to eventually accept the information that they did get, or were surprised by who came in but were actually happy with who came in?
Um, I've had a little bit of everything. I've had people who were upset that somebody didn't step forward and talk to them. Um, And in those cases, I've had accusations that I don't know what I'm doing. Which, I mean, I'm there to be a conduit of information, so take it or leave it. Like I can't do anything to prove when spirit is saying this is what this person needs, this is the information we're going to provide. So I've had to do a lot of my own trust work around that, like
Mm.
trusting that spirit is just going to give me exactly what needs to happen and whatever the consequences with that specific person is, like it's going to be okay in the end. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've had to trust that. Most of the time, I would say if somebody does say this doesn't make sense to me, 99.9% of the time they come back to me later and say, "Yep, that was accurate. I was not in a good place in my head in that moment, and I completely forgot about this specific situation, and it hit me after I left, or it hit me 2 months later." I've had people reach out to me like a year and a half later and be like, you know what? I was really hard on you. And it was exactly right. I just didn't want to admit it.
Mm.
Um, so, I mean, humans are humans,
Mm-hmm.
and spirit is spirit and really doesn't give a rip what anybody thinks. Like they know what the deal is. They know what's going on. So they're like, you know what? This is what they need. This is what they're getting. I'm done with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like they give the information, they move on.
Well, I've had
Um,
experiences like that with you too, where I wouldn't say it was a harsh experience, but times when there was really specific information I wanted, but I
mhm,
wasn't given the information that I was asking for at the time, but I was
mhm,
given different information that did end up being important. And then the information I really wanted came later. But then,
mhm.
in looking at the whole picture, I'm like, well, yeah, that I was much more ready for that information at that time where
Yeah. Yeah.
it made sense
Yeah.
and I could
And
do something with it that I couldn't have done before.
yeah, well, and human beings think that this is the timeline. Like it's a straight timeline. Everything happens in this order. If this happens, that means this needs to happen. When I ask for this information, I'll get this information and I can move on. That's not the way that it works. Like everything's happening all at the same time. It's all energy. So it's coming together. So spirit knows this and they're like, your timeline means nothing. Like you don't understand that that is not the real timeline.
Yeah.
So sometimes when spirit comes in, um, they'll talk about human time and they'll talk about divine timing
Mm-hmm.
and how human beings get very stuck on the tangible physical.
Mm-hmm.
They get very stuck on the people that are around them, the things that are around them, the timing of everything. And it's not necessarily the way that it works.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll come in and they'll give you the snippet of information that is very, very pertinent to what is happening in your life right now. You just can't see it because you're focused on this other part of the timeline because you think that that's the next step,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not.
I've had that happen many
And
times where I
yes.
wasn't listening and then the universe finally smacked me and then I got out of my own way and I was like, "Oh. Oh
Uh-huh.
my god, there's all this stuff there."
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, and so it's interesting when you start looking at the progression of things
Mhm.
and like I've had the opportunity because I when I do intuitive readings for people, I record them. And there are times that there's information in there that my guides will say, "Okay, you need to look at this again because there's information in the words that we spoke that's for you as well."
Mhm.
Um, so sometimes I used to go back and I would actually type up notes for my clients so that they wouldn't have to go back and re-listen to their readings.
Mhm.
I would actually go back and type them out. I don't know why I did
That's
that, but
some
I used to
extra
do
work
that.
right there.
Yes, but it gave me the opportunity at that time to go back and listen and hear the messages that were coming through. Because a lot of the time, spirit will give dual messages. They will come through and they will say, we're bringing these two beings together because they have things that are similar that they need to learn. And so they will bring in information, and sometimes they'll say, you need to go listen to this because some of that was for you as well. Like you both needed to hear it.
Oh,
And
that's kind of
so,
an interesting thought of sometimes you're the chosen vessel of information because you're learning too. Interesting.
yes. And if you talk to most massage therapists as well, anybody who's doing like physical work on people's bodies or working with people who are in healing their emotions, healing their body, healing spiritually, there's usually a common thread. People will come in to see you, and a lot of those people will be having the same types of issues. And spirit works in not really mysterious ways. They're very blunt about things. They put it right in front of your face. So, like when I was doing massage work, um, they would bring in like four people who had the same type of shoulder pain all at once. And it was because I was dealing with something that I needed to address and I wasn't addressing it. So they would bring me people that I would have to share this information with so that they could heal. And then they'd go, knock, knock, Puddinhead. Like, we're bringing these people because you have to keep repeating this information so that you hear it too. And so sometimes spirit will do that in sessions, like readings with people as well. They'll bring you people who are having similar experiences so that you are giving them information in multiple different ways. And as the conduit, you're also learning that information. You're receiving that message as well. Um, I have no idea where I was going with this. I know it had something to do with the
Sorry.
timeline of things, but I got off on a tangent. But just so you know, like if you start noticing people around you coming to you, this is for anybody. Like if you notice that there are multiple people who are having similar experiences in their life or having similar situations
Things coming
that,
up in conversation and stuff. Yeah.
yes, it may just be that spirit is saying, hey, we need you to address this too. We're asking you to be a conduit of information to all of these people because you need to repeat these words over and over and over again so that you hear them as well. Um, yeah.
That's all very fascinating stuff. And I feel
Yeah.
like we could definitely continue to talk about this more because I had probably about 5 more things that I was going to talk with you about that I know we just don't have time to delve in today. But we knew going into this that this would be a meaty conversation.
Yeah.
But I think we should continue this conversation on another episode and keep talking a little bit more about what I feel like is a lot of clarity that it's felt good for me to have a little bit more clarity on all of this and have a broader scope of the interconnection of
Yeah.
everything and everyone on either side of the veil and the different jobs that we can have, like it might sound weird, but when I was a child and the belief system that I was raised into, I always had this really weird question that nobody could answer. And it was this idea, some people might call it heaven or paradise or whatever, this idea that we get sometimes that it's just like this like perfect floaty, like you live forever, you have no worries, you have no stress, you have nothing that ever bad that ever happens to you, you have all of this like perfect stuff that's happening or what we think is perfect. I would ask like, but what if you get bored? And I was immediately shut down and it wasn't because I thought that people needed to be in pain to not be bored. It was because I was literally like, there's only so much you can do in a day without other interactions and things to do and job. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
supposed to just sit there all day long.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. In my little brain, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And the more I've learned about it, the more I'm like, this makes so much more sense to me that we are not, this isn't the only thing that we're doing. We're here for an experience, and we do have other things to do after this. So
Mhm.
if there is someone who wants to connect with us after we've passed, it's not that we are letting them down if they can't connect with us. It's that
Mhm.
we have other things going on, but also we might understand something a little bit better, and we know how better to support them, either with our presence or without. And I think that's actually really cool. But
Yeah,
thank you for talking a little bit more about that today.
of
So
course.
I'm going to make sure to write down some stuff so I don't forget so we can talk about
I
this again.
would love to talk to you about the different jobs that we can
Yes,
do
that's a
once we
good
cross
one.
over. Like, I want to talk to you about that because I think y- there's a lot there. There's a lot there.
Yes, let's talk about that for sure. And of course, as you can hear, we do listen when people give us suggestions, and we love suggestions to
Yep.
talk about stuff. So there might have been something some came up for someone else in here that they're interested about too. I
Yeah.
mean, we will keep talking, and if you have questions, we are more than happy to talk.
Because I have a chatterbox inside of me.
Me too. All right, well, thanks for joining us today, everybody. We will see you next
Yep.
week.
Bye. Thanks everybody for listening. If you liked what you heard today, please subscribe and check the show description for the links to the show. We would love to hear your thoughts below on this episode, as well as anything that you'd like us to talk about on future episodes. Remember, everybody, you are unique just the way you are, and that is why they call us Woo.
Mm-hmm.